Hi guys, today I'll be taking a look at another tactile switch from Tecware, the Tecware Pearl Purple. Let's get started. Now before I continue, a disclaimer, these switches were sent to me for review by Tecware. I was not paid to make this review and I did not ask or receive any compensation. Finally, impartiality will always be my top priority when making reviews, including this one. Now, the Tecware Pearl Purple, just like the Salmon switches, is part of the Pearl lineup, which consists of 4 switches, 2 tactiles and 2 linears. This time around, I'll be focusing on their lighter tactile switch, the Pearl Purple. Now, in terms of pricing, these will go for $23 per box with 35 switches, and they should be releasing very soon in Singapore, Malaysia and the Philippines. And this is what they look like when disassembled. Feel free to pause the video. Now let's move on to the switch categories. On-center key presses are mostly smooth, with some switches exhibiting small but largely unnoticeable scratchiness. Off-center key presses are scratchier than I would like, with most switches exhibiting noticeable scratchiness even when typing slowly, but it's not as bad when typing at normal speeds. It's still there, however. Overall, I'd say they're above average, but I can't recommend them to anyone looking purely at just smoothness. 6 out of 10. Now, according to the manufacturer, these switches have an actuation force of 56 grams at 2mm and a total travel of 3.9mm. Here's the force curve provided to me, which indicates slightly different figures, but they are within margin of error, so nothing crazy here. Now, in terms of the actual key feel, unlike the Salmon switches, these basically have 4mm of travel, so they don't feel off in comparison. They're pretty much standard in that department. However, tactility is severely lacking. It's very obvious from the force curves which of the two is more tactile, and the purples really lack tactility. They aren't as good as the Salmons in my opinion. Overall, they're slightly more tactile than MX Browns, with the tactile event at the top of the key press. In reality, they feel quite similar, although I'm glad these are coupled with heavier springs. It's only saving grace here. 7 out of 10. Now, sound is quieter than usual for a non-silenced tactile switch. It might be something to do with the stem materials, as the purples use UHMWPE and the Salmons use POM. Overall, I would describe them as quiet and on the clacky side of things. I'm sure they'll be even quieter with some modifications. 7 out of 10. Now, take a listen and enjoy. Now, typing performance, and I'll start with the most obvious. These are barely tactile. So if you're planning to buy these for their tactility, you'd be very disappointed. I mean, sure, it's slightly more tactile than MX Browns, but that's an incredibly low bar. These just suck at being a tactile switch. I find them to be a bit pointless as a tactile switch. Now, with that said, these switches are saved by what I consider to be a reasonable weighting and a smooth enough performance out of the box. So it's not completely the end of the world for these, they do serve a purpose. Overall, if you're looking for a smooth enough heavier MX Brown, these may fit the bill. Personally, I'm staying away from them. 6 out of 10. Now, gaming performance. It's not great either. Again, it's smooth enough that it didn't bother me, and it was heavy enough to stop me from mispressing keys. However, this isn't good enough in my opinion. These tactile switches aren't suited for most games if you like to rely on tactile feedback like me. It's actually much better to treat them as linear switches instead, which is exactly what I did, and that's a sign of poor tactility. Overall, I'm clearly not a fan. It's not gonna be my pick or recommendation for anyone looking to buy a tactile switch for gaming. Again, it's not bad, but it's not adequate either. 6 out of 10. In conclusion, these switches sit at a very weird place. They aren't as tactile as something like the Durock T1 or MX Clears, but they're also slightly more tactile than the MX Brown, but not by a huge margin. If that sounds like the perfect switch for you, then check these out, you might like them. The final score for this switch is 32 out of 50 or 64%, identical to the TTC Bluish White, which was another weird switch. Anyway, next time I'll be taking a look at another Pearl switch. Until then, take care and goodbye.